for day drinking with me today. We'll get there. We'll get there. Or, that's true. That's true. Hi, I'm Kristen Owens. I have a PhD, not in wine. I have a PhD in higher education and instructional design from Penn State. But that career is over. I have a new career. I am certified with the Guild of Master Sommeliers and Cicerone, which means I can drink professionally both wine and beer. So what a great job, right? Right? And I thought education was great. This is even better. So we're going to talk about wine today. We're going to talk about all kinds of things about wine today. The history of wine, why wine is lovely and wonderful and why you should try it, grapes, little facts, things that you can kind of amaze your dining partners with when you go out to eat, how to serve wine, how to order wine. People don't do that correctly. We're going to cover lots of things today, okay? About halfway through, we're going to do a little sampling. I brought 2 different wines for you to try. And as you can see, they're all opening up. I've been trying them. One of them is not ready yet, so I'm glad it's going to have some time to open up. So it's getting oxygenized. It's getting oxygen being put into the wine because it's been shoved into a bottle for a couple of years. And it's like, let me out. All right, so now it's out. Now it's like, oh, thank God, I can breathe, right? So that's why you need your wine to open, especially red wine. White wine, not so much. So we'll talk about that. Halfway through, we do our little wine tasting. We go through a 6-step process of tasting, the official process of tasting, and you'll all be certified somms when you leave the building today. And then we're not going to really judge them. We're going to see which ones we appreciate more. Some people like sweet, some people like not so sweet, which is dry. Dry is the opposite of sweet. So, and then we'll do a couple more presentation slides and Q&A and all that good stuff. And that's going to be it, but it's going to go by really fast, okay? So I'm glad you're all sitting down. We'll start. Why are people intimidated by wine in the first place? Ooh, it's so fancy. Ooh, it's in a bottle. You need special glasses for wine, right? No. So I never drank wine until I was 26 years old. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and the biggest, fanciest thing we had to drink was Labatt's from Canada. That was a beer. That was fancy, right? That was a big deal. We were having a party or something. Dad would go out and get a case of Labatt's. But I didn't drink wine until I was 26. And I'm going to tell you the story for a reason. Now, what happened was I was in grad school and I was invited over to my friend Michael's house, Michael's sister's house, who's very fancy, very affluent doctor. She married another very affluent doctor. They had beautiful kids, gorgeous house. It was like an estate, beautifully decorated, and they were going to offer us Thanksgiving dinner. And I said, well, yeah, I'm going to go for that. And they had their wine flown in from France. Ooh la la. And I'm like, I'm there. I want to try wine. I want to see what it's like. And they made a big deal of the wine and they poured it. And I was like, here's the wine. And we all toasted and I drank it. And I said, oh, this is pretty good. I like it. It doesn't taste like alcohol. It tastes like really good grape juice. By the end of the night, I was hilarious. I was the funniest person I have ever met in my entire life. And they thought so too, because they had been drinking enough. Now, they said they flew it over from France. So I thought, my goodness, there's no way this is not the lifestyle that I have. I'm a graduate student, I'm eating ramen out of a cup. That's my lifestyle. Years later, when I lived in Germany, when I lived in Europe and was visiting France, I found out what that wine was. It is Beaujolais Nouveau. It is $8 a bottle. I wish I would have known that back when I was 26, because it would have put me on a different path with alcohol. Seriously. Maybe that's not a good thing, but it would have definitely put me on a different path. And the thing is, I didn't appreciate wine because I thought it was beyond me. I thought it was too expensive. I thought I didn't have enough glass to drink wine. And that's all bupkis. That's not true at all. wine is part of our culture, especially if you're living in Europe or South America or even Asia. It is part of the culture that we have with food. And in America, for some reason, we don't have that. It's like verboten, okay? You only have wine at dinner and you only have one glass. Why? Who said that? Right? No, good. So we have this very interesting perspective about wine, and which is why I started getting very interested in it when I was living in Europe, and I thought, I need to study this more. And this is where I am now. And so I do presentations on wine and beer all over the world. I just recently got off Viking Cruise Lines, and I was doing a writing workshop, and we did a wine presentation, and I get invited with the Psalms, and it's wonderful. And I just love talking about it because it's something we don't know that much about, and I think that's wrong. So thank you for having me, Charlotte County Libraries. We're going to get educated on wine today, all right? So we're covering basics today. First of all, we've had this very long history with wine. Does anybody know where wine originated from? Anybody? Italy? The first human beings had wine. All right, somebody said China. I heard Egypt. Greece? Okay. So there's this gorgeous fresco in Thebes, actually, of people picking grapes. You see it? And then they're putting the grapes in this vat, and then they're putting it in this beautiful orange amphorae to ferment it. And that's wine. The Egyptians are making wine. And this was done 1500 BCE, very long time ago. However, the Egyptians stole it from somebody else. They got it from China. Very nicely done. So China's Henan province is about 7,000 BCE. 7,000. That's 9,000 years ago. Gorgeous. Look at this. Same thing. They're doing the same thing. This is on a silk scroll from the Ming Dynasty. It's gorgeous, beautiful. It's in a museum. And China is the 6th largest wine producer in the world, presently. And we never think about China. We think about France and Italy and Spain and Portugal and all those places. But China, they're doing the same thing. They're picking these lovely grapes, and they're putting it in this amphorae, which here is green, and they're fermenting the grapes. So thank you, China, for wine. Viticulture and vinification, two different things, two basic concepts we need to understand in order to understand wine. Viticulture is how grapes are grown. Very important. Florida doesn't do a very good job growing grapes, and we'll find out why. And vinification, how wine is actually made from those grapes. Now you see these huge steel tanks. These are about probably 25 feet tall steel tanks. They use the same tanks for beer as well. And you can also ferment in barrels, just you need a lot more barrels. This is more of a high production facility where you're doing lots of wine at one time. All right, let's talk about location. Super important when we talk about viticulture and grapes. How the grapes are grown, there are 3 variables. There is climate, there is topography, and there is soil. 3 variables. Climate is sunshine, frost, strong winds, hail, the possibility of hail, temperature of day and night, the change between the temperature of day and night, which is called a diurnal shift. If it's really cold in the morning and it's really hot during the day, that's a huge diurnal shift. Some grapes love it. They're like, yay, diurnal shift. The Pinot Noirs love it. Those Pinot Noirs, they love it. So topography is mountains, the slope of the hills, the bodies of water, the altitude. For example, if you've ever gone to Germany and you've ever gone on a Rhine cruise, how many people have gone on a Rhine cruise? Anybody? Oh, you gotta go. Oh, it's so nice. It's a little boat, and you just wave to people. You wave to people on either side. And on either side are these very steep slopes with vines on them. And the Rieslings are like, yeah! The Rieslings love that. They love that angled slope. It's really hard to pick them, but the Rieslings love that. And soil, all kinds of soil. Does it retain water well? Does it drain well? Is it chalky? Is it clay? Is it sand? Is it gravelly? Is it white? Is it dark? In the Champagne region in France, in Reims, the soil is very white. It's very chalky. So what happens is they plant the grapes really, really far down because those Champagne grapes don't like to be cold. They want to be warm. And what happens, it does get cold in France. So when the sun hits the white, chalky soil, it bounces up into the vines. So that's why the grapes are built low, low, low to the ground to get that warmth. So again, you don't just decide you're going to make wine. Oh, let's just buy a vineyard. There are so many variables that have to happen for you to get the best terroir. It's not terror. It's terroir. It's very French. Terroir. We do not have an English word for this. The best we can come up with is a sense of place. So the sense of place for the grapes equals the climate, topography, and soil is terroir. Okay. All right. So what about our terroir? We have something called the American Viticultural Areas, the AVAs. Sounds very official, right? Well, we like to categorize things in the United States. So we have a bunch of areas, terroirs, in the United States that have very specific elements to them. Now, they are identified and categorized as American viticultural areas, but the U.S. Tobacco and Alcohol and Trade Bureau keeps the official registers. Again, very, very official. And what basically are they? They are, quote, and this is why I have to read this, a delimited grape-growing region with specific geographic or climatic features that distinguish it from the surrounding regions and affect how grapes are grown. Whew! Basically, there's different terroirs that we have in the United States. And 85% of the grapes that are grown in that bottle have to be from that terroir, from that AVA. You can't call it Sonoma unless the grapes, 85% of those, were grown and harvested and produced in Sonoma. Okay. So there are 267 recognized AVAs in the United States. Which state has the most? Looks like that to me, huh? Yeah. Yeah. How many does Florida have? Yeah, actually, there are 34 states that have AVAs, but wine is produced in every single state in the country, including Alaska. It's not made with grapes, just like our Florida wine isn't made with grapes. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So, Florida has the most, California has the most AVAs. We're going to go to one very specific one you probably haven't heard about. It's called the Russian River Valley. California has 139 AVAs, half of the United States AVAs. They are the big kahuna. So here is California, a part of it, and there's a little black star that just moved up to where Russian River Valley is. Now let's take a look at what it looks like. Where is it specifically? It is right on the Pacific Ocean. Ooh. Breezes, cool breezes, salty air. Okay. And then there's a little mountain range that goes right here. Oh, elevation, sun, interesting. Okay. We're not going to talk about Sonoma or Napa or any of those other places. We're going to talk about Russian River Valley because it's fabulous. And they have diurnal shifts. What happens is that seacoast air comes along and it chills the grapes. And they're like, oh, thank God. It's so hot here in California. And then it goes. And then the sun comes out and it starts beaming down on the grapes. And they're like, yes, sunshine. I was getting cold from the fog. And it happens every day, every day. And the best Pinot Noirs are found in Russian River Valley, California. They love it. They're a thin-skinned grape. And they're very, very hard to grow. But they have found their spot. They just love it. And they're the best Pinots that I've ever had. And I wasn't a big Pinot Noir fan until I went there. So let's talk about Italy for a minute, because we just looked at the United States. We had a ton of AVAs, right? Well, guess what? Italy's got a lot more. They don't call them AVAs. They have a 4-level classification system, and it's all in Italian to boggle the mind. So how do you know? Look at all these areas they have. It's crazy. These beautiful maps, by the way, are from Wine Folly. It's a wonderful website. They've got gorgeous books, very, very colorful, very user-friendly. I will show you their books at the end. But this is a map of Wine Folly. You can actually buy the maps. If you have a country that you just love their wine from, they have the maps that you can purchase and put on your wall. Yeah. So, all right, Italy. They start off Vino da Tavola. That is table wine. That's the lowest. And in my opinion, probably the best because it's very economical. When you go to Italy, they have things called carboys. They're big glass, I don't know what you call them, big glass thing, jugs that you need like little rollers on them to get them from your car, and especially when they're filled. And they go up to the winery and they plunk it down. It's usually in a little raffia basket, and they plunk them down. They're about up to here on you, and they take a hose. Sexy, right? They take a hose and they open up the vat and shut off the thing. Thank you. And you roll it back to your car. That is your table wine. Mwah! It's fabulous.
How do you get it in the glass?
There's at the bottom, yeah. Or a hose. Put it in a pitcher. Yeah, you usually put it in a pitcher. Yeah, so that is your table wine. And we go all the way up to, excuse my Italian, denominazione de origine contrattata e garantita. Lots of words. Thank you. The more words there are on the Italian labels, the better the wine is, supposedly. Let's look at it. There's only 2 words here, there's 3 words here, there's 4 words here, and there's 5 words here. More words, the pricier it is. Better qualified wine, supposedly. Now, I do have a little bit of a problem with this. They're a little bit antiquated, the system, because money changes hands over the generations of how to get your wine to a 4-level classification system, right? Versus a 1 or a 2 or a 3. So things are a little, shady. But that's business in Italy, so that's fine. But so just be aware. Don't just buy the wine because it's got the 5 words on it. Buy the wine you like. Try the wine you like. They have 350 grape varietals, and don't even get me started with the French. The French are crazy. Great wines, crazy. Okay, Old World versus New World wine. We've heard this, right? How many people have heard this designation? Old World. Oh, it's Old World. Oh, it's New World. What does it mean? I don't know. Old World means Europe. All these major wine producers in Europe. New World is everybody else. Okay? So Old World is considered traditional wines, very classic wines. New Worlds are more little innovative, doing something different. Okay. Do you see China anywhere on this? No. Yeah, this is the other problem I have with vocabulary. China's not even on here, and they've been doing this nonsense for 9,000 years, so come on, right? So this is actually going away. You're not going to be hearing this a lot, but I wanted to bring it up because a lot of people don't understand what it is, but it is going away because the world is a large place, and there is wine everywhere in the world, not just these countries, not just these geographic areas, and we have to remember that. So, did you know there are table grapes and wine grapes? Wine grapes are smaller, they have thinner skins, and there's a pit inside, of course. So, did you know whether they are red or white, the juice is always clear? You can have a red grape or a white grape, which looks green. Why we call them white, I don't know. They're really green. But the juice of any grape is clear inside. So why do we have red wine? Exactly right. You leave the skins on when you make red wine. If you don't want them on, then it turns into white wine. Talk about that in a minute too. So, okay, and what about champagne? There are 3 grapes that make champagne. Champagne is not a single varietal. Single varietal means it's just one grape. Champagne has 3 grapes in it. 2 of them are red. But it's white. Guess what? Take those skins off. You got it. Just, see? There will be a quiz afterwards. I don't see anybody taking notes. Well, I see a couple people taking notes. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the process. Vinification, very fancy, is basically a 5-step process. I would like everybody to do something for me right now. Can you all, move your feet? Ah, you can make wine. Oh, congratulations. Congratulations. You just made wine. Wine is so easy to make. I've made wine, I've made beer, and beer is horrible to make. It's so hard. It takes all day, and 80% of it's cleaning, because you make one wrong move with the cleaning and the whole batch is off. Wine, just throw it in a bucket. Throw it in a bucket. So yes, if you can do this, you can make wine. And you know what? You don't even have to do this anymore. You can buy a winemaking kit. It comes in a 50-gallon box. You need help moving it into the house. It's all grape juice. That's all it is. You roll it in, you put it in a bucket, you add some stuff, you stir it, you put the top on, wait. Can you make tea? You can make wine. If you can make tea, you can make wine. Why do we think it's so beyond us? I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's funny. The more that I learn, the funnier it gets. So let's talk about harvest, pre-fermentation, fermentation, aging, and bottling and packaging. That's it. That's all it is. So you need 3 ingredients. You need yeast. Yeast does something really, really interesting. You need water, good water, not Florida water, which is why we have IPAs down here and not lagers. That's a whole nother beer conversation. We have great IPAs in Florida. Great, that's all we have. Because the water is terrible down here. So IPAs don't really need good water. You go to the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, where I used to live, you can make anything. That's why all the big beer companies are in Colorado. Okay, and then you need a fermentable sugar. In this case, grapes. In Florida's case, blackberries, cherries, strawberries, peaches, peach wine. Peach wine is great with vodka in it. Seriously, I've tried. Get a good Florida fruit wine, not too sweet, and add gin or vodka and ice, and it's perfect. That's all I can say about Florida wine. Okay, so it's not quite the same in Florida as it is in other places, but Alaska doesn't have grapes either. They have fruit. They have blueberries, wonderful blueberries, and they make a really nice blueberry wine. So these are the 3 ingredients you need. First thing, you pick the grapes. This is for red wine. You pick the grapes. You can pick them by hand. You can pick them by machine. Just pick them. The second thing, you prepare the grapes. Now, when you're talking about red wine, there isn't much you really need to do to prepare the grapes. If there's a leaf on it, if there's a bug, if there's a spider, if there's dust, if there's old chewing gum, throw it in. It'll be fine. Seriously, it'll be fine. It'll be rustic. In beer, it's called farmhouse. It's called farmhouse beer because it tastes like chicken poop. But just throw it all in. It'll be fine. Trust me, trust me, trust me. Okay, so you throw it all in, and then you add the yeast. Okay? We're going to put it in a barrel this time because we're going to age it. So you add the yeast, and what happens when you add the yeast? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. A little cha-cha starts happening. Hoo-hoo-hoo. What happens? You start hearing things. What's that? It's magic. What happens is the yeast eat the sugars, and they poop out alcohol. And that's what you're hearing. If you've ever gone to a winery, they have these huge vats. They're not sexy. They're just big plastic. They look like Legos, big plastic Legos, and they're open. And you're like, what is that beautiful sound? And it's the sugars being eaten by the yeast and pooping out alcohol. It's like a little cha-cha. It's wonderful. And it's like, oh yeah, because you know it's almost ready. And when it stops, they've eaten all they can. Oh, I'm so full I can't eat anymore. And then your wine is ready. Or you can squish it, squish it, squish it, and get all the nasties out, like the skins and the pits and the chewing gum and all of that stuff. And then you're left with this, which is called must. M-U-S-T, grape must. And it's great. Farmers love it because they use it for fertilizer. Some people use it in their baking. Yeah. 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 And then if you want to age it, you can. Even if it's for a month, you can get little barrels. My sister-in-law has like 60 around the house. And she never knows which one's ready. Oh, I think that one's ready. We'll open that one. You know, I'm like, you don't even have like a Post-it on it? Come on. So she's got them all over, and she's great fun. And so you leave it in a barrel. And what it does then, it takes some characteristics of the barrel. It takes the oak. It takes the char, a little smoky flavor. If it's a bourbon barrel, it takes a little above the bourbon flavor. And you can have a lot of fun with barrels and seeding the barrels with different liquors and then putting your red wine into it. My husband did it all the time when he was a brewer. So we would have a lot of fun with the barrels. Then, if you want to blend it together, if you want to do a blend, meaning different varietals in one bottle, you can definitely do that. That's when you would do it. And then you clarify it one more time, just to make sure it's nice and clean, nice and clear, and you bottle it. Boom, done. Now we're going to talk about white wine. It's a little different. We'll see who can spot the differences. So you pick your grapes. Now you're going to squish them. You're going to squish them and filter them. You're going to take the seeds and the skins off, okay? We just want the juice. We don't want the color, we just want the juice. And then we're going to let it settle for a little bit. Just relax. Just relax in your little tank for a while. Everything will be fine. And then we add the yeast. We're going to put it in a metal tank this time, not a barrel. And the yeast is doing its thing inside. This is the fermentation. It's fermenting. It's becoming alcohol. And then we do something very interesting. There is something called a lee, L-E-E. And what happens is there's a lot of sediment that happens, dead yeast. Yeast that didn't get eaten. It just went, so it fell to the bottom. And what we do is something called bâtonnage lees. We stir the lees because we like that stuff. It's actually quite good. It'll make our Chardonnays buttery. It'll make our champagnes creamy. It gives us some really good, without getting into too much detail, flavor. So we stir them up, try to add them back into the mix. That's called bâtonnage lees, making the lees go around and around. They also produce small sugars and acids to give us some more flavor. And then, if it's a blend, we put it all together. And then we let it sit for a little bit. And then we bottle it. So the two biggest things that we do different between a red is removing the skin and the seeds. The second is the lees, the bâtonnage lees, okay? Stirring the leftover yeast. Now, what will happen is sometimes not all of that goes away. And if you're storing it for a while, your whites, and you finally open up your white, you will get little tiny crystals at the end of the bottle. And people are like, oh, my wine is ruined. No, it's not. Oh, you're in for something special. They're called residual sugars. They look like little tiny pieces of glass or ice. And has anybody ever had them? Have you had it? If you've drank wine for a while, you've probably had them. And they're at the bottom, and they come out, and you're like, oh, I don't know if that's good or not. take your finger, lick it, put it in there, and it's sugar. And it's like Pop Rocks. Remember Pop Rocks back? It's like, that's what it is. But it's residual sugar, and they're lovely. They're like, ooh, I got a toy. I got a surprise at the end of my bottle. So residual sugars are fine to drink and eat. They're actually kind of special.
In red wines too, can't you?
I've never had them in red, only whites. Yeah, red you'll have sludge. And that's fine. You can eat the sludge. I prefer not to. Put on a cracker. Okay, so champagne. Champagne, the traditional way we make champagne is in a barrel. In the Charmat method, it's in steel. So when you look at a bottle of champagne, it'll say de traditional. I don't speak French, I speak German. Traditional, or Charmat. So traditional is wood, Charmat is steel. So we start with the barrel, and a cuvée sounds very fancy. Cuvée just means a batch of wine. Here's your wine. Let's not do it. Let's call it a cuvée instead. We're going to have cuvée. Okay. So it is, we put the tirage, we put the bub in a bot. You put the bubbles in the bottle. So you're putting it in there. All right, we're leaving a little bit of space because we're going to ferment in the bottle as well. This is a secondary fermentation. We can do that with red, but you definitely need to do it with champagne. And it's combined with yeast, sugar, spice, all of that lovely stuff, and it goes through this fermentation while in the bottle, so you need some space. It needs to be able to dance and move around. And then it goes to sleep. Don't wake the baby. It lays on its side and it sleeps in a nice, cool place. And then, after a while, we take it and we shake it up. Wake up, baby! Slapping the baby, slapping the baby. Wake up, baby! And you're like, what? It's like, what? And you're doing that on purpose because when you tip it upside down into an A-frame, all the sediments drip to the neck, okay? Because Madame Clicquot didn't like all the schmutz inside the bottle. She thought it was déclassé. It's fine. It's lees, right? It's residual sugars. She didn't like the look of it. She wanted it classy. So it goes in an A-frame, shake up, goes in an A-frame, and all that stuff begins to settle in the neck. And then it gets turned every few months. And then it gets frozen. The neck gets frozen. And then it shoots out, and all that residual stuff is gone. And then you freeze it, shoots out, you put more in to top it off. It's called dosage, okay? And that's how champagne is made. And then you put the wire cap on it because why? It is so ready to go. It is so ready to party. It's been fermented twice. There's a lot of activity going on in that bottle, and a cork just ain't going to do it. So you got to strap that baby down, okay? You really got to strap it down.
When you're topping it off,
Yeah.
what are you adding?
More champagne.
Same.
Same champagne, yeah.
Have you made champagne?
Oh, hell no. Sorry. It's a public crowd. Sorry. No. I would love to go through the process, but it takes years. I mean, just to see the different stages. I've actually been in a cellar with the A-frames and have seen them aged. It's pretty cool. And it's like spider webby and all kinds of really interesting stuff down in France. There's tons of caves. It's very nice. Actually, Colorado had some too, which was, they did sparklies. So, so that is champagne. So, did you know natural wine? Has anybody heard of natural wine? No? Oh, good. All right, it's this thing that's going around. It's the latest fad. Oh, it has to be, I have to have natural wine. All right. Organic, natural wine, yeah. Basically what it is they're not putting any stabilizers into the wine. They're hand harvesting it like babies, like, ooh, ooh. There's no gum. Okay, there's no spiders. And they use wild yeast. And it is wild. They're like, ooh, that one looks good. Let's throw that in there and see what happens. It's very inconsistent. So if you've got a red wine from, let's say, a vintner, and then the next year they make the same, it's going to be completely different wine, even if it's the same grape, because of the wild yeast, because it does all kinds of weird stuff over time. There are minimal sulfites, all right, and that's people's number one reason why they go natural. Oh, I can't have sulfites. Yes, you can. We'll talk about that. It's unfiltered, so it does taste a little bit like soup. It's a little thick. And it's, like I said, less consistent, and it's got a very strong flavor, and it's very expensive. So if anybody says, oh, I only drink natural wine, most wine is natural. It is a grape. It comes from the ground. Yes, we use pesticides and things like that to make sure the grapes are healthy, but I'd rather trade that for wild, crazy yeast, which I don't know what's going on with. So just my opinion. If you ever have an opportunity to try natural wine, do it, but I would never purchase it. It's just a lot of money.
Where do you get wild yeast?
In the wild. It just looks like regular yeast.
I didn't know you harvest yeast.
Yeah, it is. It's. Yeah, it comes in all different kinds of yeast. You can have all different kinds of yeast. Yeah. Okay, varietals. All right, how are we doing? Okay, now that we know about how to make wine, let's talk about grapes. So there's 5,000 different kinds of grapes. Oh my God. But we only plant 150 of them in the United States because we're lazy. Well, it's because of our terroir, right? We can't really plant all that. It'd be crazy. So let's talk about some classics. Here are some white classics. This is a white wine glass. These are the 5 you should know. There are others, of course. But you should really be familiar with Chardonnay, Chenin Blanc, Riesling, Sauvignon Blanc, and Semillon. All right? These are dry and sweet wines. There's others like Gewürztraminer, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris. Yay. There's lots of different whites, but these are considered the classics. I would like you to note the glass. The glass is a little up and down. Doesn't have much of a bow to it, okay? Because it doesn't really need a lot of oxygen. So the mouth is pretty consistent with the bottom, okay? Note where that glass is poured to, the wine level of where it's poured to. It's a little above it where it should be. So ladies, it's your hip. It's the biggest part of you on this side. So it should go right to the center of your hip. So this is your hip. This is where it should be right there. That's a proper pour. That's a 5-ounce pour. And the reason why it's important is because if you're entertaining and you've got 2 bottles of wine, you need to make sure everybody gets their bottle, right? Everybody gets their pour, right? And that's why you have a good wine steward in restaurants, because they know, looking at the table, oh, I need to have X amount of bottles, or I need to make sure everybody gets a 2-ounce pour versus a 5-ounce pour, which is what that is. Okay, so they're doing the math in their head. Red classics. Ooh, this is a big pour. Ooh, this is what Princess ships pour. When I'm on Princess, most everybody has a drinks package. So the stewards don't like walking back and forth a lot. They just pour you a big old glass of red. So this I call a Princess pour. It's a big pour. Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Pinot Noir, and Syrah, also known as Shiraz. Those are the classic reds. You also have Barbera, Gamay, Nebbiolo, Tempranillo, Zinfandel, lots of reds to choose from. Hey, what about rosé? You should know. What's rosé? Yeah, that's it right there. Thank you. You don't leave the skins on as long, right? That's your pink color. It's just a color. That's all. Just a color. So, did you know a French Syrah is an Australian Shiraz? It is the same grape. They just call it different things. So when you're going in the French section of the store and you see Syrah, you're like, I've never had that. Have you had Australian Shiraz? Yes, you have. They just call it different names. Did you know an Italian Primitivo is a Croatian Trubladog? It's a Trubladog. Or an American Zinfandel. I always thought a Zinfandel was a collection of different wine, like a blend. Turns out it's a real grape. It's a Primitivo. And I love Primitivo. I didn't know that. French Pinot Noir is the same as a German Spätburgunder. I love Spätburgunder. French Pinot Gris is the same as an Italian Pinot Grigio. Now, how do you tell the difference between the Pinots? There's Pinot this, Pinot that. Well, Pinot Noir, noir means night, night is dark, dark is red. That's how I remember. Okay. Okay, so reds and whites. What do you like? What don't you like? How do you know? You have to try. A bottle or a glass. It's good to know what you're getting. So here, and this is a little small, but every red has a spectrum. So a very dry red would be at the top a Sangiovese, an Italian red, very dry. A Tempranillo, an Italian red, very dry. What is dry? Dry means it's not sweet. Not sour means it's not sweet. And then you have Pinot Noir, Syrah, Merlot, Malbec, Garnacha, Zinfandel, Lambrusco, Port, and Tawny Port. That's sweet. How many people have tried port? Yeah, it's sweet. You need a baby glass for that. You don't pour it in a big old glass. You're going to get a headache. I've had a bad relationship with port. Use it for cooking. Yeah, you can. But port should be a nice digestive after dinner to settle the old tum-tum. Keep it small. Yes?
Where's the Cabernet?
Cabernet is third on the dry. Yeah, sorry. Sangiovese, Tempranillo, Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Noir, Syrah, Merlot, Malbec, Garnacha, Zinfandel, Lambrusco Dolce, Port, Tawny Port. And this is, I would consider these dessert wines. I wouldn't drink these with a meal if you paid me. Okay? So, dry, sweet. Merlot, if you don't know, Merlot is right in the middle. If you're not sure, I don't know what I want, Merlot. For whites, Muscadet, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Gris, Chardonnay, Chenin Blanc, Viognier, Torrentes, Gewürztraminer, Riesling, Moscato, white port, and ice wine. How many people had ice wine? Yeah, it's very pricey. Do you know why? They pick it at the last possible second before it rots. Seriously, it's called noble rot, because you don't want rotten grapes on your vine. Then the whole batch is gone. You can't make anything out of it. It's right before it starts to rot. And it's an art form. And you need lots of good friends or pay really, really well to have people come in. It could be 3 o'clock in the morning to go pick the grapes. And that's why they're very small batched. You're never going to see a national distributor distribute ice wine. You have to go local for ice wine because they don't have the quantity. They just don't. Yes? Ice wine? Very sweet, yeah. Yes?
What is the difference between Sauvignon Blanc and Chenin Blanc?
Chenin Blanc is just a different grape. Chenin Blanc is a little sweeter. Sauvignon Blanc is a different grape completely. And it's a little drier. It's got a little more acidic to it. It's a little more citrus. Australia and New Zealand have fabulous Sauvignon Blancs. And Chenin Blanc, I think South Africa is doing some really lovely Chenin Blancs. It's one of my favorite whites. It goes with everything, seafood, everything, pasta. Chenin Blanc's really, really lovely. And it's not that pricey at all. So.
Why do I get a headache with Chardonnay?
I'm sorry?
Why do I get a headache with Chardonnay?
Well, you know what? It's people ask me all the time why you get headaches and why you wake up not feeling too great the next day or hungover. And it's because you should be drinking a glass of water for every glass of wine you have. It's
The second swallow of a Chardonnay and I've got a headache.
it might be.
Any other drink?
Is it the same maker?
Probably not.
Okay. Yeah, I would switch to a different Chardonnay. Okay. Yeah. No, no. There might be something about that grape you don't like, your body doesn't like. I would find another white grape. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, headaches and not feeling great the next day are just because you haven't hydrated. And you think, well, I'm drinking wine, it's a liquid. You have to have water in between every glass of wine. A glass of water, glass of wine, glass of water. You'll be fine. Trust me.
So you just need to drink in the bathroom.
Okay, let's talk about sparklers. You know, we always think when we talk about, I call them sparklers because not everything is champagne, right? So this is my favorite. Cava is from Spain. I love Cava. It's a little more fruity. And Prosecco from Italy is a little dry. Great palate cleanser. Great if you're having people over for just cheese and crackers. Do Prosecco. I mean, Prosecco is just a lovely wine. And France has something called Crémant. Crémant is, poor Crémant. Can you imagine growing up next to champagne? And the whole reason Crémant is what it is because of champagne. Because in order to be champagne, of course, you know, you have to be in the Champagne region, this is Reims, France. And they're very fussy about that. That's my AVA, and you can't call it champagne unless you're in my AVA. And they said, okay, well, we're going to make sparklers too. We're going to call them Crémant. And it's wonderful. It's so wonderful. I love Crémant. It's juicy, it's creamy, it's such a nice surprise. Is it champagne? No, but it's champagne's poor cousin. And it deserves its own little AVA, as far as I'm concerned. But Crémant is really, really quite good. And you can get Crémant in any liquor store. You just don't know it. Sweetness in champagne. People like having champagne and sparklers because it's lower sugar, which it is. However, be careful because there's all kinds of spectrum for sugar. Doux is very sweet, 50 grams of sugar per liter. All the way over to Brut Nature, which is bone dry. You put it on your tongue and it's like, poof, what happened? I've had this, and I feel like I drank nothing. It's like it just disappears off your tongue. It's incredible. And then extra brut, extra dry, and demi-sec. So if you're not sure, go right to extra dry. It's not that dry. It's got a nice fruitiness to it. But if you like something a little sweeter, I'd go demi-sec or dry. So dry is a misnomer. Dry is actually sweet. Okay, so this is the hard thing. When you go to a liquor store and you go to get a nice celebratory bottle of champagne, what do you know how to buy? You know, it's like, oh, it says dry. I don't like dry. I want sweet. Well, dry is sweet. So how would you know that, right? So anything in here would be great. Doux is a very, very sweet, I would call it dessert wine. And Brut Nature, that's only for the very strong-minded because I want something I can taste. Okay, dessert wines, all kinds of dessert wines. They have higher levels of sugar. They're denser. They're thicker. And you need a small glass. Please, please, please use a small glass. There's gorgeous small glasses at Home Goods for like $8.99 for like 6 of them. Beautiful little glasses, beautiful little stem. You probably already have some from your mom. Bring them out. Put a little dessert wine in it. It's such a nice treat. People feel very special when you have a dessert wine. They're not that expensive. They're made to last, so you can cap them and save them for later. You don't have to put these in the fridge. They have a ton of alcohol in them. They are fine on their own. Just keep them in the cupboard. And again, drink very carefully with these because they are so sweet, they feel like they don't have alcohol in them, but they do. Okay? So, Gewürztraminer, Puttonyos, Azul Tokai. Tokai is lovely. It's from Hungary. I still have a bottle. And they come in different levels of Puttonyos. 5 is very, very sweet. I have a 3. It's just nice. Sauterne, Noble Rot white wines, ice wine, and so on. They are all over the map. You can try all kinds of things. If you don't want to invest in a big bottle, that's fine. When you go out to dinner, try one. They're usually about $5 to $7 per sample or per pour, okay? And see if you like it. Yes?
How about the
ice wine, the one they make in Canada.
Yeah, the ice wine. Yes, absolutely. It's very sweet, and it's right about here. It's right in the middle, actually. These are lighter, these are denser. So, right in the middle.
So this is the sugar kind?
This is the lighter tasting. They're all very sweet, but the thickness level too. Like it's very, very thick the more you go over here. So, Muscat is thick.